What's going on, everyone? So the other day I shared the images of Keldon Johnson and his body transformation. But one of the things we didn't know was how much weight he lost. Now, according to Spurs Reporter, who was the first person to relay this information about Keldon Johnson, Spurs Trivia, name an NBA player who has lost 33 pounds so far and has been working on his explosiveness so diligently that he can literally jump and kiss the rim. And the answer to that trivia question is Keldon Johnson. So again, Keldon Johnson, 33 pounds is a lot of weight to lose, right? He really is taking this seriously and really is slimming down and trying to make a name for himself this season, right? You know, like that's been one of the questions and concerns of Keldon over the last few years is just kind of like his weight and can he be explosive? Can he blow by the defender? Like, he's a bucket getter. He can absolutely get a bucket. There's no questions about it. I mean, one of his nicknames is Big Body, right? Like, that's one of his nicknames. So, now it's going to be funny. Like, are people still going to call him Big Body, or are they just going to kind of, is he going to be, slim body or something now, right? But, I mean, to go and drop 33 pounds, I'm curious to see how much of an impact it has on his game this year, right? Is there a little bit of an adjustment period, right? Is there an adjustment to his scoring and shooting and stuff, right? Because, part of having that weight behind you, part of having, the big body is he's able to be and absorb contact and do things that he's not going to be able to do as well, right? But it also opens up other things, right? If he does and has been working on his explosiveness, has been training on, just his endurance and stuff, right? Like, now he'll be able to be more versatile out there. So I definitely think this is a great thing for Keldon Johnson, but will you see the impact and effects immediately, right? Or is there a year or so where he's going to have to adjust to kind of his new body? Because, again, I mean, when you're used to playing a specific way and you're built a certain way, right? I mean, anybody, not even just in sports, but even more so in sports, right? Like, if you went from 250 to, 200, there's going to be a lot of different things. Like, there's going to be some positives, there's going to be some pros, but there's going to be a little bit adjustment. It's going to feel a little weird. You got to get used to it. And then if you add that to, you are a professional athlete that is, getting and drawing contact and doing this and doing, how does that affect his shooting, where you have the muscle memory and you have, the certain lift with that particular weight, to where now, again, if he's working on his explosiveness, he's working on his athleticism, right? Now, maybe he's jumping a little higher. So now the release point has to be different, right? Like, there's a million different things that you could look to and point at and go, man, does that have a significant impact to his game? But I do think that this is absolutely for the best, right? Like, I'm not saying this as Keldon Johnson, no, I think that this is going to be great for him. Make him more versatile on the offensive side of things. But also, does this just kind of raise his trade value? Right? Does this obviously it's going to benefit him long term in his game and stuff. But from the Spurs standpoint, are the Spurs kind of licking their chops at this because it gives them another argument point as to why a team should trade for him, right? Especially if he looks better, right? Especially if he's able to maneuver and operate better and just more freely out there on the basketball court, right? If it makes him more explosive. Right? He's still only 24 years old, right? So he'll be 25 in October, but still, he's still incredibly young. He's far from a finished product. He's still got a couple years to grow and develop and continue to work on his game and his body and all that. So, but the Spurs have been very active in trying to trade him, right? He's been their number one guy in trade conversations. And, it does make sense because he's kind of the odd man out, and even more so now, right? Because, again, you got Devin Vassell, you now drafted Stephon Castle, right? But now you got Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes. So, how are you going to approach this season in particular, and just, Keldon Johnson on the roster going forward, right? Because is he going to get the shot attempts? Is he going to get the opportunity, right? Is he going to maybe even take a step back, not because of an adjustment, but just because now he has other guys that are taking shots and kind of getting in the way and whatnot, right? This season is a real kind of question mark for Keldon Johnson, in my opinion. But I do love seeing that he's working hard to continue to grow and develop and work on his body, right? I mean, even last year he dropped 5.2 field goal attempts per game from the previous season, 2022 and 2023, right? He averaged, in 2022-2023, he averaged 17.7 attempts per game, and then last season it dropped to 12.5 attempts. Now, big reason for that is Victor Wembanyama and him going to the bench, but does that go down even further? Does he get under 10 attempts? Or are they able to do that? Because you got to keep in mind, right? Like, not only do you have Victor, who's probably going to get even more attempts because he's clearly the number one guy, but you have Devin Vassell, who's probably still working on his game and he's taking his stride. But more than anything, you got Chris Paul, who Chris Paul's going to get, probably 8 to 10 attempts per game. Yeah, Chris Paul is a pass-first guard, and I do think he's going to do a really good job of, like, setting guys up and stuff, but he's still going to want to average his, 10 points a game or whatever, right? So you're adding a guy that just last season with Golden State off the bench, right? He averaged 8.1 attempts. It's a guy that for his career has been around 13 attempts per game. And Chris Paul, I'm talking about, right? So you're talking about a guy that's coming in and let's say 8 attempts per game. That's got to come from somewhere. You add in not only that, but then you add in, a Harrison Barnes, right? So now Harrison Barnes is a guy that, he's getting 8 attempts per game, right? So now you add in his 8 to 10 attempts really is what, for his career, he's at around 11. But okay, let's say 8 from Barnes, 8 from CP3. That is basically all of Keldon Johnson's attempts that is being added to this roster. And that's not counting Stephon Castle. Now, again, obviously there's players, that got minutes and stuff. Like, I'm not saying he's not going to get any attempts, but is he going to get 12, 13 attempts per game? Or is he going to be looking more at like 8 or 9 attempts? Right? Because Stephon Castle is going to be taking probably, 5 to 8 attempts, and Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul. And then, you have, like I said, you have Victor Wembanyama taking, more this season than he did last year, right? It's just like Keldon Johnson could really be the odd man out here. And it might make the most sense for him to be traded. And, he's working on his body, having that body transformation. I just think that goes a long way too for him. Right? I think that that's something that, teams are, I'm sure, are definitely monitoring and going, you know what? Like, hang on a second, right? Like, he's not, the problem is that Keldon Johnson he's a great vacuum scorer. He's a guy that go get you a bucket, right? Especially when he's on and he's feeling it. He's cooking, right? But that's really all he gives you, right? Like, he can get tunnel vision a lot. Doesn't really play defense, right? Like, he's had his moments, he's had moments where you're like, oh, like, hey, man, like, could you just do that regularly? But like most players do. So it's just, he's not this like great playmaker. He's not like 6'8" to where it's just like, oh man, like, he's just so versatile and he can play, essentially 2 through 5. Like, no, he's 6'5", right? Can play the 2, he can play the 3. It's just, I don't know how much of an impact he would have on a particular team in a particular area unless you just needed that vacuum score, right? Unless you just needed somebody like off the bench that just go get you 15, right? Which, some teams need to. Look at like Malik Monk, right? He found his perfect just slotting, right? But, if you're asking him to come in and be a legit 3-and-D wing, he's not that, right? I mean, his defensive rating last season was 118. The year before that was 121, right? Like, he's been a well below average defender year in, year out. And it's just like, unless he can kind of really buy into that, I don't see him as more than just that backup, just bucket getter that you could slot in at the 2, slot in at the 3, and just say, hey, you just give him the green light. You let him play, 15, 20 minutes a game, and he's just a guy that's just go get the bucket, right? Like, teams need that. Like I said, look at Malik Monk, right? Malik Monk has made a career of that, but he's been fine coming off the bench, 6-man. If Keldon does get traded, is he okay with that? Or does he look at it like, does he buy into it? Look at guys like even like a Jordan Clarkson bought into it, right? Like, is Keldon Johnson somebody that's willing to really buy into it? I mean, he's kind of buying into it right now because he doesn't have a choice, right? But does he, like, if he goes to a new team, is he like, nah, I don't want to go to a team that that's what my career is going to be. But, I mean, and especially if you're the Spurs, it's like, well, we had Manu come off the bench, right? Like what are you talking about here, right? You're Keldon Johnson, like, but you're not Manu, right? Like, so it's just, I don't know. It's like kind of a tricky area. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Are you impressed by Keldon Johnson losing the weight? How do you think? No, like, we still need to see him play. We need to see how he adapts. Do you think that there's kind of a learning curve and a learning period? Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.